the vast expanse of the galaxy where countless species coexisted, under the watchful governance of the Galactic Council, an urgent distress signal pierced through the cosmic silence. The signal originated from Aranxi Prime, the peaceful homeworld of the Aranxi people, known throughout the galaxy for their advanced agricultural techniques and philosophical traditions that had never known the shadow of war. Captain Lyra Thorin stood in the bridge of the UES Reaper, her weathered hands gripping the railing as she studied the holographic display showing the distress beacon's location. The irony wasn't lost on her that Earth's most feared warship would be the one to answer a call for help. The Reaper lived up to its name, sleek, black, and bristling with weapons that could reduce entire fleets to cosmic dust. It was a ship built by a species that had clawed its way out of a death world forged by violence and hardened by countless conflicts. Captain Lieutenant Kira Hale approached her expression grim as she handed Lyra a datapad. "We've received the full briefing from the Galactic Council. The Draxian Raiders have invaded Aranxi Prime. Preliminary reports suggest they're systematically destroying agricultural centers and enslaving the population." Lyra's jaw tightened as she scrolled through the report. The Draxian Raiders were notorious throughout the galaxy, a nomadic military force that swept through systems like locusts, consuming resources and leaving devastation in their wake. Their leader, Commander Vorn, was known for his tactical brilliance and complete lack of mercy. "What about the other council members?" Lyra asked, though she already suspected the answer. "The Zenithians cite their non-aggression pacts. The Valerian Collective claims they're in the middle of their contemplation season and cannot engage in violence. The Auroran Federation has offered humanitarian aid, but no military intervention." Kira's voice carried a note of disgust. "Only Earth was willing to respond with force." Dr. Ian Corbin emerged from the communications array, his pale face reflecting the blue glow of the screens. As the ship's xenobiologist, he had been monitoring Aranxi transmissions trying to understand the full scope of the crisis. "Captain, I've been analyzing the Aranxi communications. They've never developed military technology beyond basic defensive shields. Their entire society is built on the principle of nonviolence. They literally don't know how to fight back." Lyra turned to face her senior staff. Around her, the bridge crew, all Earthborn humans, who had earned their positions through trials by fire, worked with quiet efficiency. The hum of the Reaper's engines provided a constant reminder of the power at their disposal. "Commander Vorn has made a crucial error," Lyra said, her voice carrying the weight of command that had been earned through years of conflict. "He's assuming that because the Aranxi won't fight, no one will fight for them. He's about to learn what happens when you threaten the innocent in a galaxy that includes Deathworlders." The journey to Aranxi Prime took 3 days at maximum warp. During that time, the crew prepared for what they all knew would be a brutal engagement. The Reaper's armory was checked and rechecked. Weapons systems were calibrated. Battle plans were drawn and redrawn. In the ship's medical bay, Dr. Corbin worked tirelessly to prepare for casualties, both human and Aranxi. He had studied the peaceful species, extensively fascinated by how they had developed such an advanced civilization without ever needing to perfect the art of war. "It's remarkable," he commented to Lyra during one of her visits to the medical bay. "The Aranxi have achieved what many species only dream of: perfect peace. No crime, no violence, no weapons of war. But now that peace makes them completely defenseless." "Peace is a luxury," Lyra replied, watching as Dr. Corbin prepared medical supplies for non-human physiology. "It can only exist when someone else is willing to fight for it." As they approached the Aranxi system, long-range sensors began picking up the devastation. Several of the system's outer colonies had gone dark. The normally vibrant agricultural worlds that fed half the sector showed massive burn scars visible even from orbit. "Captain," the navigation officer called out, "we're detecting multiple Draxian vessels in the system. At least 40 ships, including what appears to be their flagship, the Decimator." Lyra nodded grimly. The Decimator was Commander Vorn's personal vessel, a massive dreadnought that had been the harbinger of doom for countless worlds. The fact that Vorn himself was here told her everything she needed to know about how seriously the Raiders were taking this conquest. "Take us out of warp at the edge of the system," she ordered. "Silent running protocols. Let's see what we're dealing with before we announce ourselves." The Reaper dropped out of hyperspace like a shadow materializing from the void. Its stealth systems, developed through decades of Earth's paranoid military doctrine, rendered it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. From their vantage point at the system's edge, they could observe the full scope of the Draxian occupation. Aranxi Prime hung in space like a wounded jewel. Smoke plumes rose from its surface, where cities had once stood. Orbital agricultural platforms that had fed billions for centuries were now twisted wrecks, either destroyed or repurposed as Draxian staging areas. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Hale, staring at the tactical display. "They're not just conquering, they're systematically dismantling an entire civilization." Dr. Corbin joined them some on the bridge, his face pale as he monitored Aranxi communications. "I'm picking up scattered transmissions from refugee camps. The Draxians are forcing the survivors to dismantle their own infrastructure. They're not just taking the planet, they're erasing everything the Aranxi built." Lyra felt the familiar cold rage that had served her well in countless battles. This wasn't conquest, this was annihilation for sport. She activated the ship's communications array. "This is Captain Lyra Thorin of the United Earth Ship Reaper to all Aranxi emergency frequencies. We have received your distress call. Earth stands ready to assist. Hold on, we're coming." The response came almost immediately. A voice speaking, accented galactic standard, clearly strained with exhaustion and fear. "Captain Thorin, this is Elder Taran of the Aranxi High Council. We had heard that Earth was dangerous, but the Council told us you were our only hope. The Draxions have taken most of our world. Our people are dying. Please, if you can help us. Elder Taran." Lyra's voice was steady and reassuring. "Earth has never abandoned an ally. We will end this occupation. I need you to transmit the locations of all civilian shelters and refugee camps. We're going to get your people back." As the data came through, Lyra turned to her crew. Around her, she could see the same look in every eye, the focused intensity that came before battle, mixed with righteous anger at what they had witnessed. "Tactical assessment," she ordered. Lieutenant Hale stepped forward with the analysis. 43 Draxion vessels. Their flagship is holding position in high orbit, likely Vorn's command center. Smaller vessels are scattered throughout the system with several conducting ground operations. They've established a blockade around the planet with overlapping fields of fire. "Standard Draxian tactics," Lyra mused. "Overwhelming force, brutal efficiency, no escape routes. They're not expecting serious resistance." She paused, studying the tactical display. They're about to learn why Earth is called a death world. The plan was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its implications. The Reaper would use its stealth capabilities to penetrate the blockade, target the Draxian command structure, and create enough chaos to allow Aranxi civilians to escape to designated safe zones. But Lyra knew that no plan survived contact with the enemy, especially when that enemy was as cunning as Commander Vorn. Captain Dr. Corbin interjected his humanitarian instincts warring with military necessity. The Aranxi have never seen warfare like this. The psychological impact of human military tactics might traumatize them almost as much as the Draxion occupation. "Doctor," Lyra replied, her voice gentle but firm. "Sometimes the cure is almost as painful as the disease. But they'll be alive to recover from trauma. That's more than they'll be if we do nothing." The Reaper began its approach silent as death itself, its hull painted in the deep black of the void and inscribed with Earth military traditions dating back thousands of years cut through space like a blade. As they closed the distance to the blockade, sensors detected the first Draxian patrol vessels. Unlike the peaceful explorers and traders that usually traversed galactic space, these ships were built for one purpose: war. They bristled with weapons, their hulls scarred from countless battles, flying banners that proclaimed the systems they had conquered. "First contact in 30 seconds, the tactical officer announced. Lyra stood in the center of the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back. "All hands, this is the captain. We are about to engage a superior force that has shown no mercy to innocent civilians. Remember what we fight for. Remember that we carry the hopes of a people who have never known war. Show them what Earth's children can do." The first Draxion patrol ship detected them at a range of 50,000 kilometers. Its captain, undoubtedly surprised to encounter any resistance, hesitated for a crucial 3 seconds as he tried to identify the strange vessel. That hesitation cost him his ship and his life. The Reaper's main particle cannon fired once. The Draxian vessel simply ceased to exist, transformed into expanding plasma and debris in an instant. The other patrol ships began turning toward the threat, but the Reaper was already moving its momentum, carrying it deeper into the system, while its secondary batteries opened fire. The engagement lasted exactly 47 seconds. When it was over, 8 Draxion patrol vessels had been reduced to scrap metal and radioactive dust. The Reaper hadn't even bothered to slow down. "Alert all vessels!" Commander Vorn's voice crackled across Draxion military frequencies. "Unknown warship has breached the perimeter. All units converge on my position. Prepare for immediate engagement." Vorn stood on the bridge of the decimator, studying the tactical display with growing interest rather than concern. In his long career, he had crushed a dozen worlds and broken the spirits of countless species. The appearance of a single enemy vessel was more curiosity than threat. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "preliminary scans of the attacking vessel indicate it's of Earth origin. Configuration unknown, but energy signatures are off the charts." Vorn's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among his species. "Earth? The famous Deathworlders. I was wondering when we'd encounter them. Order the 3rd Squadron to intercept. Capture that vessel if possible. I'd like to see what makes these humans so dangerous." The 3rd Squadron consisted of 6 heavy cruisers, each one capable of reducing a city to ash. They moved to intercept the Reaper, confident in their numerical superiority and proven tactics. They never even got within weapons range. The Reaper's tactical display showed the incoming vessels as red dots converging on their position. In the weapons control center targeting computers that had been designed by a species with thousands of years of warfare experience locked onto each ship with deadly precision, Captain Lieutenant Hale reported he found Draxion heavy cruisers on intercept course. "They're not even trying to be subtle about it." "They don't think we're a threat?" Lyra observed. "Let's correct that misconception. All batteries fire at will." The Reaper opened up with everything it had. Energy beams that could punch through planetary crust lanced out across space. Kinetic projectiles launched from magnetic accelerators traveled at a significant fraction of the speed of light. Guided missiles with AI guidance systems locked onto their targets with relentless determination. The space between the Reaper and the Draxion squadron became a deadly light show as weapons fire crisscrossed through the void. But while the Draxion cruisers were designed for intimidation and overwhelming firepower against defenseless opponents, the Reaper had been built by a species that had learned warfare in the crucible of a death world, where everything, including their fellow humans, had tried to kill them. One by one, the Draxion cruisers were systematically destroyed, not disabled, not crippled, utterly annihilated. Their hulls cracked open like eggshells spilling atmosphere and crew into the vacuum of space. When the engagement was over, 6 heavy cruisers had been reduced to expanding fields of debris. The Reaper hadn't even been scratched. On the bridge of the decimator, silence fell as the full implications of what they had just witnessed sank in. Commander Vorn, who had conquered 100 worlds, found himself facing an opponent unlike anything he had ever encountered. "Sir?" His communications officer said, voice shaking slightly, "We're receiving a transmission from the Earth vessel." "Put it through," Vorn commanded, his voice betraying none of the uncertainty he felt. Lyra's image appeared on the main screen. She stood alone on the Reaper's bridge, her uniform crisp, her expression calm. To Vorn, she looked like any other bipedal humanoid, small, seemingly fragile nothing that should inspire fear. But there was something in her eyes, a coldness that spoke of countless battles fought and won that made even a warrior like Vorn pause. "Commander Vorn," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the communication link, "I am Captain Lyra Thorin of the United Earthship Reaper. You have invaded the sovereign territory of the Aurangsi people, enslaved their population, and destroyed their cities. In the name of the Galactic Council, and by the authority vested in me as a representative of Earth, I am ordering you to withdraw from this system immediately." Vorn's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Captain Thorin, your reputation precedes you, though I admit I expected more. You command a single ship against my entire fleet. Even for a Deathworlder, that seems rather optimistic." "Commander," Lyra replied, her tone conversational, almost friendly, "I've just destroyed 14 of your ships without taking a scratch. Your reputation might intimidate peaceful farmers and philosophers, but I've seen real warriors. You're not one of them." The insult hit home. Vorn's species placed immense value on martial prowess, and to be called weak by a human, a species many in the galaxy still considered primitive, was unbearable. "You've made a grave error, human," Vorn snarled. "I'll crush your ship and broadcast your death across the galaxy as a lesson to any who would dare challenge the Draxian raiders." "You're welcome to try," Lyra said simply, and cut the transmission. The battle for Aurangsi Prime began in earnest. Vorn committed his entire fleet to the engagement. 37 remaining ships, including his massive flagship, converged on the Reaper's position. It should have been overwhelming force, enough firepower to reduce a small moon to rubble. But Captain Lyra Thorin had not survived this long by fighting fair. The Reaper dove toward Aurangsi Prime, using the planet's gravity well to slingshot around and gain speed. As Draxion vessels moved to intercept the human ship, unleashed a weapon that no other species in the galaxy possessed: tactical nuclear missiles. The explosion lit up space like a miniature star. 3 Draxian cruisers simply vanished in the nuclear fire, while several others were crippled by electromagnetic pulse and thermal radiation. But the Reaper was already moving its course, taking it on a complex spiral through the enemy formation. In the depths of space, a deadly dance began. The Reaper moved like nothing the Draxians had ever seen, not with the ponderous grace of their own capital ships, but with an almost organic fluidity that spoke of a species that had evolved in constant motion, constant threat. Earth military doctrine had been written in the blood of 2 world wars, countless smaller conflicts, and the harsh lessons learned when humanity had first ventured into space, only to discover they were far from the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Every human ship was designed with one principle in mind: if you are going to fight, fight to win, and never give your enemy a chance to recover. The Reaper demonstrated this philosophy perfectly. It never stayed in one place long enough for the Draxion ships to concentrate their fire weaving through their formation like a predator among prey. Its weapons fired constantly energy beams that never seemed to miss, kinetic projectiles that struck with devastating precision, and missiles that pursued their targets with relentless determination. "Captain," Lieutenant Hale called out over the noise of battle, "we're taking some hits to the port shields. Nothing critical, but we can't keep this up forever." "We don't need forever," Lyra replied, studying the tactical display. "Just long enough. Dr. Corbin, how are the Aurangsi evacuations proceeding?" Dr. Corbin, monitoring civilian communications from his station, looked up with relief evident on his face. "The safe zones you designated are filling up. The Aurangsi are organizing refugee convoys under our escort patterns. We've already gotten approximately 60% of the civilian population to safety." "Excellent. Tactical, prepare the planet strike packages. Target every Draxion installation on the surface. The planet strike packages were another uniquely human innovation weapons designed not just to destroy military targets, but to make any attempt at reoccupation impossible. Where other species might content themselves with disabling enemy bases, humans had learned the value of total destruction. As the Reaper continued its deadly dance through the Draxion fleet, launch tubes opened along its hull. Dozens of missiles streaked toward Aranxi Prime, each one targeted at a Draxion ground installation. The explosions could be seen from orbit, brilliant flashes that marked the end of the occupying forces. Commander Vorn watched his carefully planned invasion crumble before his eyes. In less than an hour, this single human ship had destroyed half his fleet and eliminated all his ground forces. His legendary tactical genius seemed useless against an enemy that fought with such brutal efficiency. "Sir," his weapons officer called out, "we have a clear shot at the human vessel. All main batteries are locked on." Vorn nodded grimly. The Decimator was his last advantage, a dreadnought whose main cannon could punch through the hull of any known ship. Fire! The massive energy beam lanced across space, carrying enough power to vaporize a city. It struck the Reaper's shields in a blinding explosion that lit up the entire system. For a moment, everyone watched to see if any ship could survive such a devastating blow. When the light faded, the Reaper was still there, its shields flickering, but intact. Scarred, damaged, but still very much in the fight. Lyra's voice came over the communication channel, calm and measured, despite the chaos of battle around her. "Commander Vorn, you seem to be under the impression that I came here to play games with you. Allow me to correct that assumption." The Reaper turned toward the Decimator, and for the first time in his career, Commander Vorn felt something he hadn't experienced since his youth fear. Not of death, which he had faced countless times, but of facing an enemy he couldn't understand, couldn't predict, couldn't defeat. "All remaining ships," he ordered, "converge on the Decimator. Protect the flagship at all costs." But it was too late. The human ship was already accelerating toward them, building speed for what could only be a ramming attack. The remaining Draxion vessels tried to intercept, but the Reaper's point defense systems created a barrier of destruction around the ship. Any missile or fighter that came too close was instantly vaporized. At the last possible moment, the Reaper fired every weapon it had directly at the Decimator. Particle beams, kinetic rounds, plasma torpedoes, and nuclear missiles all concentrated on a single target. The Decimator's shields held for exactly 1.7 seconds before collapsing entirely. The dreadnought's hull forged from the strongest materials the Draxion civilization could produce, cracked like an egg. Atmosphere vented explosively into space, carrying with it the hopes and fears of a crew that had thought themselves invincible. But Commander Vorn was not finished. As his ship died around him, he activated the Decimator's self-destruct sequence, a final spiteful gesture meant to take his enemy with him. The explosion was visible from neighboring star systems. The Decimator became a second sun for nearly 10 seconds, its destruction lighting up the battlefield and marking the end of the Draxion invasion of Aranxi Prime. When the light faded, space around Aranxi Prime was filled with debris and the twisted remains of what had once been a proud fleet. Of the 43 ships that had begun the battle, only 7 remained. All of them heavily damaged and fleeing the system as fast as their engines could carry them. The Reaper hung motionless in space, its hull scarred and blackened, but still intact. On the bridge, Captain Lyra Thorin surveyed the aftermath of the battle with grim satisfaction. Captain Dr. Corbin reported, "I'm receiving transmissions from the planet. Elder Terran wants to speak with you." Lyra nodded, straightening her uniform. "Put him through." The holographic image of Elder Taran appeared before her. He was tall and willowy, as all Aranxi were, with the pale blue skin and large eyes characteristic of his species. But where she had expected to see gratitude, Lyra found something more complex, a mixture of relief, fear, and profound confusion. Captain Thorin. Elder Taran said, his voice carrying the musical quality common to Arangsi speech. We don't know how to thank you. You saved our world, our people, our entire civilization. But we also watched you destroy an entire fleet, kill thousands of beings, and turn space around our planet into a graveyard. Lyra nodded slowly. She had expected this reaction. Elder Taran, I understand your confusion. Your people have never known war, never had to make the choices that survival sometimes demands. We did what was necessary to save your world. But the violence, Taran continued, his large eyes reflecting a kind of innocent horror that stirred something protective in Lyra's chest. We had heard that Earth was dangerous, that humans were warriors, but seeing it, experiencing it, this is how you live, how you solve problems. Not all problems, Lyra replied gently. We have art, literature, music, philosophy, all the things that make life worth living. But when someone threatens the innocent, when diplomacy fails, and mercy is seen as weakness, then, yes, we become what we need to be. Lieutenant Hale stepped forward, her expression thoughtful. Elder, with respect, you called for help. The Galactic Council's peaceful species couldn't provide that help. We could, and we did. The method might seem brutal to you, but your people are alive and free. Dr. Corbin added his voice, his medical training making him particularly sensitive to the Arangsi perspective. Elder Taran, I've studied your people extensively. You've achieved something remarkable, a society without violence, without war. But that peace was only possible because you never encountered someone like Commander Vorn, someone who only understood force. Elder Taran was quiet for a long moment, processing words that challenged everything his peaceful civilization believed. Finally, he spoke again, his voice heavy with a new understanding that seemed to age him as they watched. Captain Thorin, I think we need to learn from this. Our pacifism, our inability to defend ourselves, nearly led to our extinction. Perhaps there is a difference between choosing peace and being unable to fight for it. There is wisdom in both paths, Lyra acknowledged. Peace is the goal, Elder Taran. It's what we fight to protect. But sometimes you need someone willing to fight so that others don't have to. Over the following days, the Reaper remained in orbit around Arangsi Prime, its crew working tirelessly to help coordinate relief efforts and begin the long process of rebuilding. Dr. Corbin had been all but adopted by the Arangsi medical community, sharing human techniques for treating trauma. Something his peaceful hosts had never needed to deal with before. Lieutenant Hale found herself working closely with Arangsi engineers, helping them understand the debris field that now surrounded their planet, and assisting in the recovery of useful materials from the destroyed Draxian fleet. But it was Captain Lyra Thorin who faced the most complex challenge. Elder Taran had requested private meetings to discuss the future, how the Arangsi might protect themselves without abandoning their principles of nonviolence. Captain Taran said during one such meeting held in the restored Arangsi Council chambers, "We've been debating among ourselves since the battle. Some of our people believe we should develop military capabilities, learn to defend ourselves. Others fear that the very act of preparing for war will change who we are as a people." Lyra considered this carefully. She had seen what war could do to a species, how the necessity of violence could slowly consume a civilization's soul if they weren't careful. Elder, there's no easy answer. But I can tell you this strength doesn't have to corrupt. The key is remembering why you fight. We humans have a saying, peace through strength. It means that sometimes the best way to avoid war is to be capable of winning one. But how do we maintain our identity, our peaceful nature, while also becoming capable of such destruction? By never forgetting the cost, Lyra replied. Every human child learns about the wars we fought, the price we've paid for freedom. We remember not to glorify war, but to ensure we never forget why peace is worth fighting for. As the Reaper prepared to depart, The entire Aranxi population gathered to see them off. The farewell ceremony was unlike anything in Aranxi tradition. They had no customs for honoring warriors because they had never had any. Elder Taran presented Captain Lyra Thorin with a simple crystal pendant carved with symbols representing growth renewal and protection. Captain, we will remember what you've done for us. And we will remember the lesson you taught us that peace is not the absence of the capacity for violence, but the choice not to use it unless necessary. Lyra accepted the gift with genuine gratitude. Elder Taran, your people have shown us something valuable too. You've reminded us what we're fighting to protect the right of people to live in peace, to choose their own path to grow and flourish without fear. As the Reaper departed Aranxi Prime, its crew carried with them a complex mixture of pride and soberness. They had completed their mission, saved an entire civilization, and struck a decisive blow against one of the galaxy's most feared military forces. But they had also been forced to confront the cost of their intervention. The Aranxi would survive, would rebuild, would continue their peaceful existence. But they would do so forever changed by the knowledge that sometimes survival required others to embrace violence on their behalf. In the weeks that followed, news of the Battle of Aranxi Prime spread throughout the galaxy. The complete destruction of the Draxian raiders sent shockwaves through every species that had ever been threatened by them. For the first time in generations, the peaceful worlds of the Galactic Council could sleep soundly knowing that there were those willing to fight for them. But the victory also sparked intense debate within the Council itself. Some species began questioning their long-held beliefs about violence and pacifism. Others worried about the implications of having humans, these dangerous Deathworlders, as protectors. Earth's status in the galaxy changed almost overnight. Where once they had been viewed with suspicion and fear, now they were seen as something more complex, dangerous, yes, but also protectors. The phrase, "when you need the monsters to fight monsters," began circulating in diplomatic circles, often referring to humanity's unique position in galactic society. Captain Lyra Thorin found herself called before the Galactic Council to give testimony about the engagement. Standing before representatives of dozens of species, she spoke not as a conqueror or a warrior seeking glory, but as someone who had been forced to make hard choices for the greater good. Honored representatives, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast council chamber, we did not seek this conflict. We responded to a call for help from a member species under threat. Yes, our methods were violent. Yes, many died. But the alternative was the extinction of an entire civilization. The Valerian representative, a crystalline being whose species communicated through harmonic vibrations, asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Captain Thorin, how can the Council reconcile its commitment to peace with the necessity of violence that you represent? Lyra paused, choosing her words carefully. Honored representatives, Earth has learned through bitter experience that there are some threats that cannot be reasoned with, some enemies who only understand strength. We don't ask you to abandon your principles of peace. We ask only that you remember that peace must sometimes be defended. The Auroran delegate, representing one of the oldest and most philosophical species in the galaxy, spoke next. Captain, your actions have saved the Aranxi, but they have also introduced a new dynamic into galactic politics. How do we ensure that Earth's military power doesn't simply replace the threats it eliminated? By holding us accountable, Lyra replied without hesitation. By ensuring that we remember we serve peace, not our own interests. By continuing to be the voices of conscience that remind us why we fight. Earth doesn't want to be the galaxy's police force. We want to be the last resort when all else fails. The debate continued for hours, with representatives voicing concerns, asking questions, and grappling with the complex implications of the Aranxi incident. In the end, a resolution was passed that formally recognized Earth's role as a defensive force within the galactic community, while also establishing oversight mechanisms to ensure that human military intervention remained truly a last resort. Back aboard the Reaper, now docked at a council station for repairs and debriefing, the crew reflected on their experience. Dr. Corbin had been working on a comprehensive report about the Arangzi, hoping to help other peaceful species understand the psychological impact of violence and how to recover from trauma. "You know," he said to Lyra, as they stood in the observation deck watching the stars, "I've been thinking about what Elder Taran said, about the difference between choosing peace and being unable to fight for it." "It's a profound distinction," Lyra agreed. "The Arangzi chose peace because they believed it was right. That's admirable, but they also couldn't imagine a situation where that choice might be taken away from them." Lieutenant Hale joined them, carrying a data pad with messages from various council species. "Captain, we're receiving requests for cooperation from a dozen different species. Apparently, our demonstration at Arangzi Prime has convinced quite a few governments that they need better defensive capabilities." Lyra sighed, a sound that carried the weight of responsibility she had never asked for. "We've opened a door that can't be closed, haven't we? The galaxy is going to change because of what we did." "Change isn't necessarily bad," Dr. Corbin observed. "The Arangzi are already working on ways to defend themselves that don't compromise their peaceful nature. They're developing early warning systems, evacuation protocols, and even negotiating mutual defense treaties with other species. They're choosing to be proactive about their security without becoming warriors themselves. And the galaxy is safer with the Draxion raiders gone," Hale added. "How many other species were living in fear of them? How many worlds might they have destroyed if we hadn't stopped them?" Lyra nodded, but her expression remained troubled. "I just hope we haven't traded one problem for a larger one. Earth's military strength was meant to protect ourselves and our allies. Now it seems like we're being looked to as the solution to every conflict in the galaxy. Maybe," Dr. Corbin said thoughtfully, "that's not entirely a bad thing. Not because we should police the galaxy, but because our example might encourage other species to take more responsibility for their own defense, to find the balance between peace and strength that we've been struggling with for centuries." The conversation was interrupted by a communication from the bridge. A priority message had come through from Earth Command marked for the captain's immediate attention. Lyra made her way to her quarters and activated the secure communication link. The image of Admiral Rebecca Stone, Earth's Chief of Naval Operations, appeared before her. Stone was a veteran of the first human-alien conflicts, one of the architects of humanity's current military doctrine. Captain Thorin Stone began without preamble. "I've reviewed your mission report and the Council's response. You've done excellent work, but I need to inform you that Earth Command has decided to establish a new division within our fleet, the Galactic Response Force. You're being promoted to Commodore and given command of this new unit." Lyra felt a mix of pride and apprehension. "Admiral, what's the scope of this new force?" 5 ships, including the Reaper, will be permanently assigned to Council space. Your mission will be to respond to threats against member species, particularly those that cannot defend themselves. Consider it humanity's formal contribution to galactic security. Admiral, with respect, are we sure this is the right path the galaxy has managed without human military intervention for thousands of years? Stone's expression was sympathetic but firm. Lyra, the galaxy, also allowed the Draxion raiders to operate for centuries, destroying countless worlds. The Council's peaceful species have created a beautiful civilization, but they've also created a power vacuum that predators like Vorn have exploited. Like it or not, we're the only species in the Council capable of filling that vacuum responsibly. After the communication ended, Lyra sat in silence for a long time, contemplating the weight of the responsibility being placed on her shoulders. Earth had answered a call for help and saved a world, but in doing so, they had fundamentally altered their relationship with the rest of the galaxy. A soft chime indicated someone requesting entry to her quarters. "Come in," she called. Elder Taran materialized as a hologram, his image transmitted from the planet below. "Captain Thorin, I hope I'm not intruding. I wanted to share some news with you before you departed." "Of course, Elder. What's happened?" "We've been in communication with several other peaceful species within the Council. The Zenithians, the Aurelius Collective, even the Crystal Gardens Confederacy, were forming what we're calling the Peaceful Worlds Alliance, not a military organization, but a mutual support network. Lyra raised an eyebrow. What kind of support? Information sharing, early warning systems, resource allocation for defense. Defensive defense, not weapons. We're also establishing protocols for requesting help when needed. The idea is that peaceful species can work together to protect each other without abandoning our core principles. That's actually brilliant, Lyra admitted. You're taking responsibility for your own security while maintaining your identity. We learned from you, Captain. You showed us that strength and peace aren't mutually exclusive, they're mutually supportive. The strong protect the peaceful, and the peaceful remind the strong why. That protection matters. As Terran's image faded, Lyra realized that the Arunxi had learned the most important lesson of all, that true peace wasn't simply the absence of conflict, but the active choice to resolve differences without violence, backed by the ability to defend that choice when necessary. The Reaper departed Arunxi Prime the next day, beginning its journey back to Earth space to pick up its new companionships and officially establish the Galactic Response Force. As they passed through the debris field that had once been the Draxian fleet, Dr. Corbin made a final observation. You know, Captain, I think we did more than save the Arunxi. I think we helped the entire galaxy find a new balance. How so, Doctor? The peaceful species are learning to take responsibility for their own defense. The predator species are learning that aggression has consequences. And we found our place as the bridge between them, neither purely peaceful nor purely aggressive, but something in between. Lieutenant Hale, now promoted to commander, following the mission's success, added her own thoughts. Perhaps that's what the galaxy needed, not just another peaceful species or another aggressive one, but one that understood both and could navigate between them. As the stars streamed past the observation windows, Captain Now, Commodore Lyra Thorin, reflected on the events that had brought them to this point. A single distress call had changed everything, not just for Earth and the Arunxi, but for the entire galactic community. The Reaper and its crew had answered that call with violence, yes, but violence in service of peace. They had shown that sometimes the greatest act of compassion was the willingness to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. And in the depths of space, as they headed toward an uncertain future, where humanity would serve as both sword and shield for the galaxy's peaceful worlds, Lyra Thorin made a quiet promise to herself and to the memory of all those who had died in the battle for Arunxi Prime. They would remember the cost. They would remember why they fought. And they would ensure that the peace they preserved would always be worth the price they paid to maintain it. The galaxy had called for help, and Earth had answered, not with aid, but with something far more valuable. The promise that the innocent would be protected, the aggressive would be stopped, and peace would be preserved not through weakness but through strength tempered by wisdom. As the Reaper disappeared into hyperspace, heading for Earth and its new destiny as the galaxy's protector, the systems it left behind were already changing. The Arunxi were rebuilding stronger and wiser. The peaceful species were organizing for their mutual defense. And throughout known space, a new understanding was taking hold. Peace was not a state of being. It was a choice that had to be made, again and again defended when necessary, and preserved at all costs. And sometimes that preservation required those willing to embrace the darkness so that others could live in the light.